hammers, city planning, and building codes. These are all things that I have grown up loving and wanting to know more about. And today's guest is a very special guest, somebody that I admire, somebody who is such an inspiration to myself, because being a contractor's daughter and obviously a full-time real estate agent, doing work to my own house, having a husband who is a union electrician, I am always so envious of the women who are doing this type of work. And I love seeing that more and more we are starting to see women putting on hard hats, going to work in the field, building houses. And today's guest is Amy Felix. She is a full-time architect and designer here in the Bay Area. Amy, I am so excited to have you on today's show, and I cannot wait to hear more about your time, your experience, and just kind of your daily grind as a full-time mompreneur in a field that I think so many of us want to hear more about. Hello, Amy.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing well, Olivia. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday.
Yes.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. And as I had mentioned, Amy, you are in an industry that I love personally because I'm a contractor's daughter, and I've always wanted to learn more about. So you're such an inspiration, I think, for so many people, but in general, women who desire to get into a field that for so many years has really been male driven, right? There's so many men in your field, especially the fact that you actually have done construction in the past as well. So I can't wait to hear more about that and more about your experience. But first, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, Amy, and your business.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me, Olivia. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I am Amy Felix. I live in San Jose, California, and I'm an architect. I'm also a mom of two little girls. One is 9 months and one is 2.5 years old. I'm married to my husband, Mitch, and I run a company called EPIC, which is an acronym for Empower People, Impact Cultures.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. So besides being an architect, you also have quite a background. Share with us a little bit about how you became an architect, because this is a really interesting story and I want you to be able to share it.
Yeah, thank you. When I was thinking about this, there really isn't a clear line between when I wasn't an architect and when I was. It's something that's sort of always been in my passion. My grandpa, he built his own house. And ever since I went there as a kid and saw the spiral staircase, which was the first time I'd ever seen one, I just fell in love with the fact that architecture could be different. And so when I was a kid, instead of just having a lemonade stand and putting up a table, I decided, no, we need an actual building. And so my dad took me and we went to Home Depot and I drew out little plans and we got plywood and we made this little 4-foot by 4-foot cube that me and my neighbor girlfriend could stand in and sell our lemonade. So I've just always loved architecture and design. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to redesign my room and paint it new colors and get a new bedspread to coordinate it. And then really as a career path, I've been pretty deliberate about getting a diverse experience and exposure to the industry because it's really architecture, engineering, construction. There's a lot of sides of it. And so, I worked for an architect. I did all my internship hours. I worked for a larger architect, getting a lot of good experience there. But then I also worked for a small startup architect, which was fun. I got to see all the behind the scenes of the business because there was only 6 of us. And then I was getting my license and I thought, you know what? I still don't know how to build. Like I did a lot of drafting. I did a lot of work on projects and checking all the boxes to get my architecture license, but it wasn't the depth that I was really looking for. So I got a job as a construction manager with a big multifamily home builder. And I spent a few years on the job site running the job. And as you mentioned, it's very rare for that to be a woman. So it was sort of the running joke of, oh, you want to know what's going on? Go find the girl. Because I was usually the only female on the job site. And
I love it. I love it.
And I was in charge of probably about 25 subcontractors. Yeah. And so I would do all the scheduling. Like I was the one in the trailer calling all the foremen in for the meeting every week. I would psych myself up and I'd have all my notes organized of who's doing what got done, what didn't get done. And it was one of the best experiences I could have ever asked for. I did all the walking with the city inspectors, the fire marshal to get the sign-offs and find out what was wrong. And so I got to be on the other end, usually in design, like I would be as the architect's assistant writing, responses to, oh, this is how to build it. But this way I got to be in the field saying, this is the problem. And then finding out what people say, often finding out that doesn't really work and learning how we're actually going to build it. And then letting them know, hey, here's what we're going to do and documenting that. So that was a great experience I had. I also worked for a large commercial concrete contractor. And I got to do a lot of estimating because I became passionate about learning more about the business side of construction. And it was fun on those projects because they were large scale. So I was putting out $1 to $5 million construction bids for just the concrete portion. So these were $100 million plus projects. And all multifamily apartments and condos, which is actually my favorite because I think of them like a puzzle where you have to fit everything together. And I also worked as the design build project manager for them. And so that's where, like I said, as a puzzle, I got to really be in the weeds every week with these coordination meetings, finding out what was going wrong and how to turn the vision from the plans into a reality. And that's something that is just totally my passion in this industry of taking dirt and turning it into an occupied building.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's such a great path that you've built yourself. And excuse me for 1 second, because I'm going to cough here. That started coming on and I was like, I got to stop this for 1 second. Sorry about that. Amy, probably the most thought out and organized jobs that you probably ever walked and did, right? I'm sure all of those men are missing you one way or another. And it's so great. It kind of brings me back to when we were talking about in architecture at the beginning stages, and you're not really able to be kind of full blown in the middle, at the end, and kind of throughout. And so you were able to see that full pipeline, having those other experiences, right? As a project manager. And it's kind of like when I was in real estate, and yet I had bought a property many years before ever being in real estate. But when I bought my first property at 25, I literally just said, okay, all the numbers look right. I'm going to sign, just sign. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just going to sign. And then when I actually bought my first Bay Area home, I remember going, holy crap, I actually understand everything my client's experiencing now, right? And so what really it does is it helps us be more understanding to our clients because we're in it. We've been in it, right? And so for you as an architect, you actually get to, I'm sure, sit down with your clients and say, here's a little tip, right? As you move forward with your contractors, here's what to do and what not to do. Just side note, right? Because I've done that. Here's what's going to save you over the next year of doing this big project and probably save your marriage in the meantime, because it's so stressful. We're doing this like one little teeny tiny demo in our house right now, and it's 3 days delayed, which is nothing in construction. But my husband left to work this morning and he goes, our TV was supposed to be up 72 hours ago. Tell those contractors to clean up and get out of our house. I want my TV back, right? Right. So it's really awesome that you were able to fill yourself with so much knowledge for your clients. And I think that's priceless because most architects I meet, they are simply architects, nothing against being just an architect, but they don't have that other experience and that depth that you do, which I think is amazing and priceless.
Thank you. Yeah, it's something I've started to notice even from the beginning of when I'm working with clients. When I put together proposals, I like to go really in depth because I've just learned, like, I don't want to fluff and just give a number. Like, if I'm going to do a job, I want to know what we're really doing. And so I think I surprise clients that we're talking about what are their schedule expectations? What are their budget expectations? Do they have any design preferences? From the first conversation I have with them, because to me, another thing that makes me a little different than some architects is I love construction and I love things getting built. And there is a degree of reality to that. Like, you can make a lot in an image, but then there are financial constraints, there are material constraints that happen in the real world when you're building. And so I like to address those too.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. So I know that architecture has really just been kind of part of your blood. Like you said, you were the child building your lemonade stand and creating this amazing, masterpiece as a child. But didn't you do something before architecture design? I mean, tell us a little bit about how you got from college and what you were doing in college and your dream there to architecture.
Sure. So with sales, I think is what you're referring to. I had a great sales job when I was in college. I was supposed to be, originally I was going to work as a lifeguard, right, as like a summer job during college. But then I happened to hear about Cutco Cutlery, which is a direct sales company. And I took the job. And what's interesting is I worked it for 5 summers in a row. And it actually gave me priceless experience. And it's actually where I met my husband. Some of my friends to this day are from this job. Not working there currently, but that's where we met originally. And what was really special is it was a place where they empowered people based on results. It didn't matter how old you were. So as a 19, 20-year-old, I was allowed to go run an office because I did well personally in my own sales with customers. And so I got the opportunity to run an office. And I actually spent 2 summers on the island of Guam running an office there. Both summers back to back, did over $225,000 of knife sales in a place I had never been, by hiring and training mostly other college students to go sell this product. And what was really special is it's something that I carry with my business to me today, is that it doesn't have to always be focused on the product. It's really about a purpose. And we talked a lot about life skills in that company and personal development and personal growth. And that's just something that ever since I got exposed to it, I've been hooked. And so I love reading and listening to podcasts and talking to people to just continue to learn and to see what other people are doing and strive for more.
I love it. Amy, you said Cutco, and it was like a light bulb went off. I don't think you actually know this.
Okay.
I don't even know if your husband knows this. I met Mitch years and years and years ago when he was standing in a hallway at a conference I went to in Southern California selling Cutco knives. And he was the first person that hooked me into buying a bunch of Cutco knives for my clients.
Mm-hmm.
So wild. And when I finally met him for what he's doing today, I actually still receive text messages at the end of the year from a Mitch Felix. And I went, is this a coincidence? No, it's not. This is the same Mitch Felix I bought Cutco from years and years and years ago. And he's still texting me.
Yeah.
It's so funny. But, that's what I love about you. The times that we have spoken, it's all about the relationships and the priceless learning lessons throughout your life that has really brought you to where you are today. And, it really makes somebody like myself think about all of the other jobs that I've done in my life that were really jobs, But I truly believe that every job has been a stepping stone in my life that has created what I am now able to give to clients, right? And I am one of those people that believe every day is a learning lesson. Every day I'm going to learn something more to be able to continue to give back to our clients, right? So I never want to stop learning. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be surrounded by multi-millionaires who have much more success than I do and are way smarter than I am, which is one of the reasons I started this podcast, because it helps me build relationships with other mompreneurs who are really successful. And success is defined in so many different ways, right? It's not about how much money you're making. It doesn't matter, what your goal is and if you've met it. Really, what it comes down to is what is your own personal definition of success, and have you met that? Really, right? So fun stuff. I love it. Talk to me. I'm sure people want to know, talk to me about being an architect and kind of knowing the construction world. How are you staying up with all of the different planning codes and city planning? Everything is changing. Mm-hmm. It's like in real estate, the contract is constantly changing. We're always having to stay up to date. How are you staying up to date as to everything that's changing and being able to help clients know what's happening day to day?
Sure. Great question. I think the best tool I have is just doing the projects. And so I'm doing projects in different cities in the Bay Area, different counties. That's been helpful because by doing the work, you start to learn about different ordinances that may be neighborhood specific or city specific. And then also by doing work, you start to hear about patterns. And so one thing that came up recently is a lot of cities are redoing their housing ordinance or their housing element. And so this means that rezoning is actually happening. Every 10 years, they look at some of the zoning and they redo it. Now, normally it's at the buyer, or the homeowner's expense, or if it's a sale going on, the new property owner's expense to change the zoning. But every 10 years, the city takes some of the ownership and changes some of the zoning. And particularly right now, there's a big push for more and more housing. And so that's why certain areas are already rezoning, which in my opinion, just increases the value of the land. And that's something I learned by doing a project and learning in one specific city. When I was talking to the planner, I've gotten really in depth with her housing element because it's her whole project this year that she lives and breathes. And I started looking at other cities and they're doing it as well. Wow. And then I have to just say, talking to people, I think it's really important for me to be talking about what I do and the industry I'm in with all sorts of people. I was at a dinner party last night with a friend. We had our kids together and her husband is actually a hedge fund manager. And he told me that just right now, there's a new legislation getting passed that's all commercial land is now also going to be allowed to be like mixed use. You can add residential to it as well, which is a huge plus. Yeah. And then a lot of people already know about ADUs and these accessory dwelling units that have become popular over the past 5 to 10 years. But a lot of it's coming word of mouth, I think, in doing the projects, because then you're on the front lines of really working with the cities who are also figuring it out, because it starts at the state level, but then each city and county has to adopt it into their plans. And so I get to be right there when they're figuring it out as well.
Yeah, no, that brings up a great point. I mean, so I'm surrounded by contractors and people in the industry. My father's a contractor here in the Bay Area. My husband's a union electrician. My husband's uncle's a developer in the Easton Addition in Hillsborough, Burlingame area. And we were really surprised to find out through word of mouth, just like you said, from Shane's uncle, that single family homes, there was something passed in which single family homes can actually now become 4-unit buildings. So you can actually create a 4-unit building on your single family home zoning. And that's crazy town to me. That's huge. right? I mean, Shane and I were like, how do we do this? How do we get our single family home to become 4 units, right? It's like cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And so it is really interesting what you start to find out when you start to really do the research and talk to the right people. Because of course, when you're in, architecture or construction or developing and building, you're knowing these things firsthand because you're working with clients that are always doing the building inspections and everything happening with the city. So that's amazing. What have been some of your biggest aha moments or learning lessons? And what would you say to someone who is deciding whether or not to start their own business?
I think this is a great question and something I feel like I could just have a whole day's worth of thoughts on.
Me too.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of things that in my journey have been really important. So I'll run through some of those. And I think also it's really interesting to think about businesses are so different. So some people have the intention to just work for themselves, and that's great. Some people have ambition to, run a big company. That happens to be something that I want to do, is I want to run a big company. But then that also has its own challenges. So like for me, some of the aha moments have been being okay with the evolution. And I love that I've, had babies in my life a lot recently. And so I try to remind myself, like, it's okay to change rapidly, faster than I would want to or really choose to. But the same way, a newborn is just barely can open their eyes. And then 9 months later is crawling around and making all sorts of noises. Like I've had to learn how to evolve very fast in my business and okay, I make a decision, I try it out. And in 90 days, if it's not working, sometimes I make the hard decision and cut something out and go back on that. So I think that's been really important for me. I think also if people are thinking about starting a business, in my opinion, it's often more of a lifestyle. It's different than a job where maybe you go there and you don't, or I know everything's mostly online now, but still there's a little bit of a boundary. At least for me, running my own business is it's who I am. So I don't think I could change it, but it does make for a blurry line between personal life and marriage and, work. And my husband and I actually have a running joke about this. We're like, oh, here's the crisp line when you're you got a baby in one hand and you're on a work call. We're like, yeah, what a crisp line this is, just separating the things that we do. So
I love it.
But I've also learned to give myself some grace that before I would get really down that was bad. And then I realized it's not necessarily bad. I don't know why I think it has to be bad when also at the same time, I do really think it'd be great that my girls get to grow up seeing me running a business. I think that's really exciting. And so it's not like I would want to hide it from them anyway. And I think also for people, if they're thinking about starting a business, think about some of the resources. This is something I didn't do a lot because I sort of slipped into my business. I had started it on the side of my corporate job and did that for years, and then transitioned into it. So I don't think I had, again, no crisp line of beginning and end of thinking okay, let's set this up. But in hindsight, I do really value knowing who your people are and having people to support you both emotionally, professionally, mentors, and also just who are you going to talk about it when you have a rough day? Is it going to be your spouse? Is it going to be your best friend? Is it going to be your employee? And then thinking about the realities of the business. This is something that at my best, I think about business as a game, and like to think about the funding, think about the marketing. I think if someone's thinking about starting a business and they feel like they're going to do it someday, I would say do it. That's how I was. It was just a matter of when. Because I think if you think you're a business person, you might as well try it out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are all such great aha moments, as well as just encouraging words. I love what you said about giving yourself grace. That is something that I'm still learning and reminding myself daily, especially being a mompreneur, right? I started doing what I'm doing far before I actually had children. And I thought my life was crazy back then, working, 18-hour days and being up until 2 or 3 in the morning, going over disclosures and helping clients. And then I got pregnant and had Lucas. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, but how am I going to do everything? And then I just did it. Like I just made it work, right? And then, oh my gosh, Devin came along totally unexpected. And I went, oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. How the hell am I going to do this, right? And then just normally you do it. But I will say that having 2 small children and a full-time business is a lot of added pressure and stress. And I will say that one of the things that I've really had to learn is exactly what you said, which is some days I'm going to be just way too tired and I'm going to have to say, today I can only give 2 hours. And the rest of the time, I either need to go walk on the beach by myself while the kids are being taken care of, or I need to go take a nap in my car in a parking garage. And oh, let me tell you, I've done that. Like I've gone and disappeared and shut my phone off for a couple of hours so I could get a couple of hours of rest. And when you have babies, a lot of people don't think about like, oh my gosh, like that's true. You have to sleep, right? If you're not sleeping at night, you've got to sleep somewhere. So I really encourage anyone listening to this that is a mom of young children or children that are older and, still giving the challenges of children that they do, give yourself grace and just know that it takes time. It takes time. Formulating a business and having a thriving business, it takes years and years and years and years and years. I've been doing this for 8 years and I still feel like a newbie half of the time. And like I said earlier, it's like always the learning and the growing, right? And in another 8 years from now, I'm going to be different and the business is going to be different. And that's okay because we're going to move through, like you said, that every 90 days, we're going to look at what is working and what isn't, and doing the shifts and the changes that come with business and life, right? Because life is just going to happen and we have to embrace that all the time. So it's a lot. It's a lot. And then you throw in marriage and we won't even go there, but that's a whole other conversation, right?
Yeah, so true. It makes me think too about just the saying and the idea that a lot of people underestimate what they can do they overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, for me, so true with the time. I was so guilty of being in the hustle culture in my 20s and just like, especially in the architecture industry, it's very popular to be cool, to pull all-nighters and do whatever you do to get it done. But if you're pulling an all-nighter because you're up breastfeeding or doing whatever you're doing, that doesn't, quote unquote, count towards your work efforts. So I think definitely I've had to reevaluate my expectations of time. And it's really been a good thing. I think it makes it more sustainable. I think it makes it more promising long-term. I was just listening to another podcast also recently that the concept is they were talking about you can do something through sacrifice, but then if it makes you resent it, it might not be worth it. And I had to really stop and think about that because I've been good at just grinding it out. That's kind of like in my blood. Like I'm an Ironman triathlete. I can just grind it out. But that's not always the way to do it. And that's really the gift I think my daughters are teaching me is that I actually stop work, because I am going to spend time with them. And then I have to realize how to do it in a different way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it took Devin coming along. I'm a true believer that our children come into our lives to teach us lessons that we haven't learned yet in this lifetime. And not everybody believes that, but I really am a true believer. And it took me becoming unexpectedly pregnant with our second and being on bed rest, forced bed rest before I miscarried for 6 weeks. So somebody like you and I that are running big businesses, have young children already, and are having to survive, right? With all of the life going on behind us, all of that stuff. And all of a sudden you're shut down. You have to make a choice between life and death, right? Mm-hmm. And it's in one day, like one day, you're just like, oh my God, like, what do you mean I can't go to my client meeting tomorrow? What do you mean I have to cancel everything I have on my schedule for the next 6 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. And it was that moment, I was so pissed off. I will never forget it. I was so mad at the world. Mm-hmm. And it took me doing a Reiki session from bed to hear the lesson of it, which is, Olivia, you need to slow down. And we've been trying to get you to slow down for so long and you haven't been listening. So now we're forcing you to slow down. And I was like, oh my gosh, this baby is not even born. And he's already teaching me to slow down. And he has been that lesson in my life. He's 18 months. And every day I come home now and let the nanny leave. And I get an hour with him before our oldest comes home from school. And that's my hour of no phone unless we have a client emergency happening. And it's my hour of just being with him, whatever he wants to do for that hour. And Amy, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't like that just a couple of years ago. And so again, it's about the self-reflection and what our journey is and the lessons we're learning, because as mompreneurs, it's a daily lesson, right? I truly believe that. It's like every day we're being taught lessons, whether we listen to the lessons or not, that's a whole different story, right?
Right.
So it's fun, but it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's not for everybody. It really isn't. Yeah. And I have high respects for those who just want to go to work 9 to 5 and say, screw it, I'm leaving the computer on the corporate job on a Friday and coming back Monday morning. I don't want to deal with it. But there is so much value to this life as a mompreneur as well. And there's so much flexibility and there's so much gold to this. And I want to be able to encourage women who are sitting on the sidelines, not living their ultimate dream of becoming a mompreneur. And that's really what the show is all about, is us being able to share our experiences, our stories, and anyone who's watching it going, you know what? I can do it. They can do it. I can do it. And you're right. If we can do it, you can do it. Right? So I'm all about that. I'm really all about that. Well, before I let you go, I want you to just give us a recap about your business. Tell us one more time, what services do you provide? And what sets you apart from your competitors, and who is your target audience? Because we want to make sure that we help build your pipeline here in the Bay Area.
I appreciate that. And I do have to say, I'm so excited about what you're doing. And for those listening, I think that Olivia's message is great. It's true that I think one of the limitations is that if you're working a job and you don't love it, you don't have to be there. I've been there. And so that's just the words of encouragement I want to send out to you, is that you could do it, you could figure it out, and you can try and see. And if you don't like it, you could always get another job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, as far as me, I run a company called EPIC. So we offer architecture services. So we do traditional work such as getting drawings for permit, working with the city, entitlements with planning departments. We also offer something that I really enjoy, which is upfront. It's called a feasibility study. So if someone has a property and they're thinking, what can I do with this? Can I add on to it? Like you were talking about, there's a lot of rezoning going on. So if you want to get the latest and greatest on your property, that's something we do. So before you really make plans or do anything, you just say, what's possible? That's a little report we put together. And then I also am really excited about in 2023, next year, we're going to be launching more and more of our real estate investing opportunities and a little bit more on the developer side. So not just working on traditional architecture, but working more with developers and also with people that want to invest in real estate, but don't know and or don't care about the actual logistics, the building, all of that. And as far as my target market, I do particularly love working with women. You know, it's been interesting. I have all sorts of clients But I have noticed a pattern where, because I was the only woman often in the industry, in the room that I was in, on the job site that I was on, I found a really great camaraderie with other women that want to build a project, and they trust me because unfortunately there is a weird stereotype about some other men in the industry, both as architects and as contractors. And I feel like I have a really unique perspective that people just find relatable. And I also, it's my approach to not ever act like I know it all, especially because it's always changing. Construction materials change, the regulations change that the cities and states allow. And so to me, one of my biggest strengths is that I'm a great project manager and coordinator. So I actually think of myself not just as an architect, but really as a building producer. Yes, I can get the drawings. Yes, we can get you your 3D model or your 2D CAD plans, but let's also get a building and let's have it be exciting. So I love when people want to hire us for the whole package. Those are our ideal clients when they say, we got a project that's right at the beginning, because then I can help them figure out what consultants are they going to need? Are they going to need engineers? Do they need an arborist? Do they need to go get the soil sampled? We have a whole checklist, and I get so excited about asking questions to figure out who are you going to need on your team? And then working with the cities to find out what's going to be required, because city by city, it's different in terms of getting a permit, how much you have to do. And it even depends on even your address. So certain cities, if it's a property that hasn't been built yet, they call it a green site. That's different than if you already have a home on that site and you're going to tear it down or add on to it. And so I think the people that want to utilize someone who really has comprehensive knowledge, that's someone who would really enjoy working with me. If someone's looking for just, crank out the plans, I don't really want to talk about it, that's probably not the best fit.
I love it. I love how much into the details you go just because of your background and what you actually love, right? Mm-hmm. And I find that really is priceless for the clients that are going to hire you. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, but if you've ever spoken to a group of architects, most people who draw the plans don't have the knowledge that you do. And they certainly don't get excited about all of the other details as much as you do. So it's really, really, really wonderful. And the first time I met you, I was just so blown away by your energy, your enthusiasm, and really the love that you have for your business. And that's, I think, really what sets you apart for me. Is it really resonated because I have so much love for what I do, and I can see that passion in your eyes. And I can really tell when people are doing things because they love it versus it's just a job to them, right? And I'm trying to surround myself with women more like yourself, and really just trying to help encourage other women to accomplish their dreams and to jump in and do what they love as well. So, Amy, such a pleasure. I love speaking with you. I'm so excited for you and your business, and I look forward to collaborating and hopefully one day utilizing you when I have some big investment in a few years. So excited for what 2023 opens and opportunities you're able to present, and the feasibility for any realtors out there in the Bay Area. Call Amy, talk to her about her feasibility plans, because it is so amazing what she's doing. You could have clients looking at a property, be in escrow. If they have the unknown factor as to what they can or cannot do with that property, she's able to help educate them, right? And that is something that we really have a hard time finding in this industry. So I'm excited to be able to utilize your services with our clients. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure, Amy. Have a great week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.